And today is really cool, and we have 2 for 1. Today I'm talking to Kiki from Fiji and his granddad, Dr. Austin Bowden-Kerby, who is a coral restoration scientist with corals for conservation, working to prevent the collapse of coral reefs in the face of climate change. Hi, Kiki and Dr. Bowden-Kerby. Kiki, you dive with your granddad in corals. What is that like?
Well, I think it was last month or 2 months ago. I went with Granddaddy into the beach and saw his coral farm. And and we saw three coral
crown of thorn starfish that were killing the coral.
Yeah, and we took a big sharp rock from underwater and smashed their heads.
Yeah, we kill these things because they kill the coral. So, so Kiki, remember the first time you went snorkeling? Remember that first time? He was climbing on my back about 2 years ago, and he got so excited he wanted to touch all the coral. It was, what color was it?
Huh?
What color was the coral?
It was yellow.
Yellow? Okay. There are also some purple corals.
Yeah, there's yellow, purple, and fire corals. If you touch them, they sting you.
Yeah, there's some that hurt. Kind of orangey. Blue ones are my favorite, but most corals are brown with blue tips and stuff like that, little colors. But the brown color is there's algae inside them that they use to make food from the sun. So corals are photosynthetic like plants are. And so plants are green and corals are mostly a kind of a brownish green color, because that's the algae that they have in them, are kind of brownish.
Dr. Bowden, why are corals so important?
Well, corals are the houses of fish. So did you see a lot of fish?
Yeah.
Lots of fish there. So lots of fish and lobsters and things like that, octopus. So corals are the houses of fish. And most of the fish on the reef are just living in those corals. And if the corals die, then they don't make very good fish houses. Corals also give food to fish when they grow. So there's some parrotfish that eat them. Butterfly fish are beautiful fish, but they live off of coral. They eat the coral. The corals also, when the waves come in a hurricane or a cyclone, the corals kind of break the waves and keep the waves from hurting the shore. And so corals are very important. And if you look at the white beaches of sand, white sandy beaches, the sand here is made out of coral. And that coral is, you know how it becomes on the beach?
Yep.
How does it come on the beach?
Some fish called parrotfish eat the corals and poop it out, and what they poop is called sand.
So when a coral dies, the parrotfish chew away the dead corals and they poop out sand. And most of the sand on the beach is parrotfish poo-poo.
And also, I think it was last year on November 16th. I went with it wasn't on November 16th, because that was 5 days after my mama died. No, it was last year, maybe on August or some month. I had found a blue coral.
A blue starfish?
Yeah, no, it wasn't blue starfish. A coral starfish.
Crown of thorns?
Crown of thorns starfish.
Oh, he saw a crown of thorns.
I had found a blue one.
Was that
I thought
on Vila?
No, it wasn't on Vila. It was in a beach.
Okay. So
at Christmas Beach.
Keith also goes to different places without me sometimes, and so I hear these stories later.
Because first I thought it was a pretty shell, and as soon as I touched it, something really sharp went inside my hand, and my mama she had a sharp knife for us to cut oranges, but then she was picking through my finger, cutting my flesh.
I think that was a sea urchin that you touched.
No, it wasn't a sea urchin. It was a crown of thorns starfish.
Okay. Yeah, they're very bad.
Yeah.
So Kiki had a tragedy in his life. His mother passed away last November.
On November 11th.
Yeah, so he's
2021.
We've been dealing with a real tragedy. So, but we're getting over it now. And
very sorry.
Yeah.
What is threatening corals?
Well,
crown of thorn starfish.
Yeah, the crown of thorn starfish can kill corals. But you know why there's too many crown of thorns?
Why?
Okay, the thing that eats the crown of thorn starfish naturally is this big shell called a Triton's trumpet. And people have taken that away for shell collecting. And now there's too many crown of thorns because their enemies are gone. So it's like if you take all the wolves out of the forest in America or in Canada, if you take the wolves out, then the deer become too many. And they found out that after they killed off all the wolves, there were too many deer and they started killing all the trees. So then they had hunters to come and hunters had to come and shoot some deer. So the hunters are actually doing something good by taking out the deer when there's too many of them. And then they eat the deer. But, you know, so life is a little bit, when the reef gets unbalanced by overfishing or something, then there'll be too much of something. So there's too many crown of thorns starfish. And sometimes there's too many parrotfish, believe it or not, because people killed all the sharks. Okay, and then there'll be too many parrotfish and they can eat up even the live corals when that happens. That doesn't happen in the Caribbean though, it only happens in the Pacific. Okay, other things that are killing coral though, the worst thing is climate change. And that is because the ocean is getting too hot. So right now the temperature in the water is 30 degrees, the ocean, you know, it feels warm. 30, even 31 or 32 sometimes on the reef. So when it gets too hot, the corals, they lose their algae and they turn white, and it's called bleaching, and that can kill them. Did you see the white corals? Yeah, but also they turn white when a crown of thorns kills them.
And they also turn white if they're not in the water, because when I went over with Granddaddy, I could see all the corals. They were so big. If here is the water level, they were like up to here.
Yeah, it was very, very low tide. And some of the corals grow so high that they get out of the water at low tide. So that what I do is I go around sometimes and get those corals that are sticking out in the air and bring them down to the water to save them.
What are super corals?
Okay, super corals are corals that are strong in, they're strong against hot water. So a super coral is a coral that can survive in very hot water. For example, even 35 degrees or 37 degrees. So that's the equivalent of like 95 or 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So they can survive even to 37 sometimes without dying. And we do have some super corals. And where Kiki was going, the corals are pretty good. They can survive to about 32 or 33, which is like 85 or 87. So in Fahrenheit. So super corals are corals that can survive into the future, but there are not that many of them. So when there's a really, really hot water comes, the whole reef can turn white. It looks just like a snowstorm in Canada. Can you imagine? I've gone to reefs and everything is bright white. But then you look in about every 2,000 or 3,000 corals, you see, hey, here's one that didn't lose the color. Now that's a super coral. For something about it is different, that it didn't lose the algae inside. And all the corals that turn pure white, they'll starve to death because they can't make food, because they get a lot of their food from the sun. Most of their food comes from the sunlight, just like a plant. What if a plant turned pure white? Would it be able to survive? I don't think so. It couldn't make food, and then it would starve. So that's called albino, right? Albino. So sometimes you do see a baby coconut tree that's pure white. It's got no green in the leaves, but it never survives. It can survive as long as there's food in the coconut seed, and then it'll grow. And then when the food is gone, it dies because it can't make its own. So,
and over here, we basically live on top of a mountain. And can I take the one?
Oh, sorry, but we're breaking up his interview. But anyway, Kiki wants to show you what it looks like here. Watch out, you might lose my computer. Can you see this? This is our farm.
Cool.
Okay, so what we're doing on the farm, one of the problems with the coral reef is that when people are farmers, if they dig up the soil, they can actually make too much mud in the water. And that mud can kill corals. And so what we're doing here is showing people what we call permaculture, a way of growing things that doesn't disturb the soil so much, so that the mud doesn't go onto the reef. So that's another thing that causes corals. So, so plastic pollution, plastic bags can get snagged on the corals. We have to remove those sometimes when we see them. Sometimes people throw their t-shirt away or something, and it washes down the river and it gets snagged on a coral. And so it can be smothered on a t-shirt or a piece of cloth. So we have to keep our rubbish out of the water. We have to keep the mud out of the water by having good farming practices. And too much fertilizer is very bad too. Can come off of the crops and go down and make the algae. Very bad algae can grow on the coral sometimes.
What happens if we lose the coral reefs?
Boy. So one thing about coral reefs is that with climate change, you've heard about climate change, I think, right? Climate change is caused by too much carbon dioxide in the air, and it's making the earth get hotter. So the scientists around the world have decided that coral reefs are going to be the very first system that dies out from the climate change. So, and what happens is reefs, these coral reefs, they protect the shore, they protect the beaches, they make the beaches, they give people food with all the fish, all the fish that are there. They're really beautiful, and people want to come to Fiji as tourists. They want to come and snorkel like Kiki does. So they want to come and they want to see the beautiful reefs. And so if coral reefs are dead, we won't have any tourism, we won't have any beaches, we won't have much fish to eat, and the waves will crash into the shore and wash away the villages. And the sea's coming up. You know, the ice is melting in Canada. You heard about that, right? The ice is melting at the North Pole and in the South Pole. And every year around Fiji, it's coming up almost 11 millimeters in some places, but the average is more like 5 millimeters a year. And that's a lot. And that's from the melted water from Canada. Did you know that, Kiki? So the ice is melting. So already in my life, the sea's come up, you know, maybe 20 centimeters. It's come up a lot in my life. And in Kiki's life and your life, it might come up a whole meter or two, which sounds really bad because what's that going to do to the cities and everything? So climate change is very bad. So coral reefs are like the early warning system. They're the first system that's in big trouble from climate change. The coral reefs and the glaciers and the Arctic. So Canada also shares the tundra areas in the north are melting and turning muddy, right? And the polar bears are going to have a hard time living. So the two systems in the world that are the most in danger right now are the Arctic tundra, which Canada has a lot of, and the coral reefs that Fiji has a lot of. So we're kind of connected in that way, right? So, I used to wear a red hat. I was Santa Claus, I used to be Santa Claus. That's what I tell the kids. And I used to live at the North Pole, but then it melted and my workshop fell in the water, and all the elves had to evacuate to Greenland, and the reindeer came down to Canada. They're living down there. And so basically they should make a movie about that. Okay. And I moved to Fiji because I wanted to save the coral reefs, right? And so you guys in Canada need to save your tundra, and we need to save our coral reefs. The only way to save it is to stop climate change. And the only way to stop climate change is to stop the oil shale and the oil production and the coal production. We have to find alternative sources of energy. And that's going to be very difficult, but not so bad. It's just that people don't want it to happen because they don't want to lose their money. Rich people want to stay rich. and actually some things are a lot more important than money. The human beings are more important, and so is the planet Earth. So we will change our energy systems to save the world, and even if we have to suffer a little bit for it.
What can kids do to help?
No. Okay, you have to realize that you are the future of this world, right? And that, okay, wait, he's running away. You are the future of this world, and the world that you're inheriting is not the perfect world, is it, Kiki? It's not really perfect. It's got a lot of problems. Oh, yeah. We know that there's a lot of pollution, there's litter problems, and there's all kinds of climate change. There's all kinds of problems. So what you can do now, the job that you're doing now, how can you help? Well, of course, you can help around your house, helping your parents. You can learn how to garden. You can learn how to grow things. You can learn you can figure out what are you going to do in this world that's going to make the world a better place, right? So right now, the most important thing you can do is kind of think about find out what you're good at doing, what you like doing, and do it really well, and do things that actually make a difference. If you like farming, go into farming in such a way that it's organic and it helps to make better food, and it helps to protect nature, right?
Granddaddy has 3 jobs at a time.
Yeah.
Well, one is coral reef scientist, the other one is taking care of his chickens, and another one is selling his chickens.
Oh yeah, I sell baby chickens. But also we have this big farm here that we're trying to show people how to be in balance with nature. So no matter what you like to do in your world, if you're good at math and accounting or whatever, there's a lot of room for people who want to make a change and want to make a difference and make this world a better place. So if you can focus on trying to develop your own skills, art skills are very important. Kiki does art, and art skills are important because
I do arts and craft. I paint.
yeah, so you develop those skills, and then as you get,
Arts.
I'm good at art too. And sometimes I make posters for children in school. I've made a whole lot of posters to educate communities. And so the skills that I learned when I was a kid, even though I'm not an artist professionally, I've had to use those skills a lot of times. Okay. And so if you're good at, are you good at art?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, develop those skills. Music is something that can really be useful because songs inspire people. Songs help people to you know, they help people to focus on various things. So music, arts, and science, of course, is very important. If you're interested in science, study, you know, sometimes it's kind of taught in a boring way, but science itself is not boring at all. And there's all kinds of YouTubes about science and volcanoes and how all about coral reefs and what's going on. Amazing things on the internet that you can learn. If school is boring, well, it doesn't have to be boring in your, if your parents let you find good stuff on the internet, and you can learn all about coral reefs and corals and fish and everything. There's a lot of good stuff on the internet. So what you need to do is, the most important thing is to try to focus on.
Here's something I painted.
Kiki just painted something. What is it, Kiki?
No, it's like at night, and then he hears like a tree, and here's the moon.
Okay, he drew a nighttime sky. So you understand. I think the purpose of our life is to make the world a better place, right?
Yes.
So if you want to help save the reefs, okay, it's very, you know, you need to help save the world. So you don't have to come over and just plant a coral. That's what we do over here. We're working on saving the reefs. But if you really want to help the reefs, help to solve the climate change problem. So if, for example, when you leave your room at night, to go downstairs at night, turn off the light. Turning off the light helps the world, okay? Because, and some lights, so you have to find out, some of the lights, the tube lights, where they take some energy to start up, they say that those, you shouldn't turn them off every time you leave the room, because it costs more power to turn them back on than it does if you leave it on. But a lot of the lights, it saves on electricity if you turn them off, especially if you're gonna be gone for a long, long time, or, you know, and so like you go to school, to make sure your lights are off and stuff like that. That helps the world. So you try to lower your burden on the world. When you get your dinner, when you eat dinner, don't take more than you're going to eat, that you're going to throw it away, unless you have a dog to give it to or a cat. It's better not to use more food or buy more food than you use. So they say like 40 or 50% of all the food purchased goes to waste. Can you believe that? And so try not to waste food in your house. You might help your mother, say, hey, Mom, we have these carrots. They're going bad in the fridge. Can we use them up for dinner? That helps the world. Did you know that? Hey, that's a great idea. Teach all the kids to be aware of what's in the fridge and what leftovers you have. Instead of making something new, say, hey, we like those leftovers. Let's heat them up for dinner. Okay, that saves a lot of energy and it saves a lot of food. So can you imagine if all the kids—
We actually do that on this farm.
Yeah. But can you imagine if all the kids were helping their mother to keep the fridge from having these foods that go bad, you know, these bad foods. So if you could keep your mom focused on using that food, so instead of making new food and having to buy new food, because that's a huge burden on the planet, is wasted agricultural products. He did a pretty good job.
So I have a question for Kiki.
Question for Kiki. Yeah.
Kiki, what is your day like?
It's actually very fun, because if I want to have a coconut, I can just ask, and if Randy allows it, I can go and climb a coconut tree and grab it and cut it open.
And we have some short coconut trees that he can reach, the coconuts. So he does drink coconuts when he wants to. We feed the chickens twice a day, and sometimes Kiki goes along and helps, throws the chicken food to the chickens, or gets the eggs. He knows how to cook. So how's your, hey Kiki, but what else about your day that's unusual? So we live in on a farm, so it's a pretty good place to be for a kid. We have sheep, and we have a horse. We have 3 dogs and 3 cats. We have kittens right now, and we have a bunch of geese and ducks, and we have a lot of chickens, a couple hundred chickens. So what I'm doing with the chickens is I try to get baby chickens in the villages near the ocean. So instead of killing all the fish, they can eat eggs instead. So normally on the weekday, he has to leave for school around 7, right, Kiki? So he has to walk. Our road is pretty bad here, this little driveway. It's about a half a kilometer. He has to go down to the main road where it's tar sealed and then catch the minivan to the school. And then he's at school until 3 o'clock, and then he comes back. But it's
I'm in school for 8 hours.
8 hours, really?
Yeah, in one day.
Because he starts so early.
I leave at 7. I come back at 3. Think about it.
7, 8, 9. Yeah, that's 8 hours. So he goes to school 5 days a week, and then he's home on the weekend. And today's Saturday here.
What is your favorite thing to do?
What's your favorite thing to do? Or one of your favorite things?
Go up to my mama's grave and see her.
Yeah, his mama is buried on the property up here at the top, up on the top of the hill here. So Kiki goes up there in the morning, and sometimes he visits his mom.
No, I go up there every day.
Every day.
Every day at 7 a.m. or 5 a.m.
Yeah.
So something around that.
So yeah, it's really difficult to have to learn to deal with that. But she had cancer. She died of cancer. So we knew she was.
Cancer.
Yeah. So so Kiki has a bit of trouble. He has a little sister that's 1 year old almost.
She's not 1 year old.
She's
She's only 8 months old.
No, she's gonna be 1 year
She was
old.
born in March
She'll be-
2021.
Yeah, it's March again. She'll turn 1 year old this month, but she's with her other grandparents.
On March 26th is their birthday. So on March 26th.
Your little sister, hey, Kiki, stop it. He's all excited. He doesn't real his sister is gonna be 1. She's starting to walk a little bit, but she doesn't live at the farm right now. She's with her other grandparents because she's still in diapers and she's just difficult too. But Kiki's father is here, my son Aka.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
What do you want to be when you grow up, Kiki?
A doctor.
A doctor. And why do you want to be a doctor?
I like helping people.
He likes helping people. And I don't think he wants any more people to die. Yeah, and maybe when I'm old, he'll take care of me.
Thanks so much for joining me today, Kiki and Dr. Bowden.
Just call me Grandpa. I call me Granddaddy, actually. Granddaddy Austin. Okay. So
click the link below to donate to Corals for Conservation. And remember, together kids can save the world. Please like and subscribe.
thank you. Thank you, Robert.